Bro, but you're killing. You can't be like, I hope he knows, you know, like I'm not the one who wants him dead, so he has to be okay, right? Yo. Oh no. So when he sounded like a weirdo, a creep, he wanted to speak to her and he couldn't. To be Hero X, you know, some people have said fallen off. No, I've loved it this whole way, but Ghostblade just really reinforces how messed this society is. Drop a like, share your support. Subscribe if you're new around here and you know Patreon for live reactions and exclusives live over there. So, I'm thinking back to Furman. Is that his name, Furman? The guy who couldn't ever sit down? You know, just such a little story in the grand picture of this world. But imagine not being able to sit because society's like, you're the Furman, you always stand tall. The society sucks ass. It really does. Here's the thing. Ghostblade, half of his content in this episode is funny. His wife literally said I do through text message. I saw a comment on Reddit, on the 2BHeroX Reddit. It's something along the lines of terminally online Gen Z love story. And that shit's funny to me. But then you have on the flip side the tragicness of it, of a man who didn't like, because I thought to myself, if you're gonna kickstart his episode with him being a serial killer, man, like, okay, he's like, I don't want to kill these people, but someone's gotta do it. I'm just the assassin. Don't shoot the messenger. Ain't the best excuse if you ask me. So we watch his 175th kill. Got pointed out. I didn't realize this. Pretty sure that was Johnny's father. Given Johnny's has 3 episodes coming up, that will tie into that, I'm sure. And he's like, I really hope he doesn't, you know, well, he understands. It's just a mission. It's like, bro, you are messing the head. But the idea that, you know, this woman was so antisocial, but like you could tell she cared, like the little mannerisms, like, oh, you know, they would probably hold hands. She would snuggle up sometimes, but she just couldn't communicate. And it wasn't seemingly until she got pregnant that she forced herself to change, which is a completely believable character piece, right? The idea that you're stuck in your ways, which can be fine. Some people like their routine, but once you become a parent, it doesn't matter what you want. It matters what the kid's going to need. You can't have a antisocial parent. You need to be able to interact with your kid, who will be very social, right? Especially at a young baby to infant toddler age range. Whereas for Ghostblade, you know, he couldn't do that, especially because he was in the eyes of the public, and the public, the idea that he didn't even want to be a hero. The concept of just someone snapping pictures of you and posting it on social media could turn you into a public sensation. And unlike our own world where that could happen, you're not a magical force that forces you into that image. So the idea of the cool, calm, and collected doesn't speak. Yeah, he can't speak. So her saying, leave the public eye. If you do that, eventually your trust values will drop and, you know, you'll be able to have a normal life. And obviously the fear of change is something he couldn't do, so we got the kind of deadbeat father situation. And the unfortunate thing is no matter what he did or tried, he couldn't escape the control of the masses. And that's what makes it tragic and reminds me of Furman, who just wanted to sit down. Couldn't. Imagine a man who just wants to call up his daughter on the phone and say, I'm sorry, I messed up. I've been gone for 18 years of your life. There's no excuse. And instead, it's just some creep on the phone mumbling and sounding like a sex pest. Like, they had fun. You can't tell me him being underwater, like pretending to be a tree. All these like different goofy moments are hilarious. But when you strip it down to the bare essentials, it's heartbreaking what's happened to him. Now, a lot of it is his own self-doing. Had he initially, when the wife was like, okay, I'm going to take the daughter and leave, had he immediately then tried to separate from the public eye, things would have went different. But, you know, people make mistakes, humans make mistakes. The unfortunate thing is every time he tried to own up to those mistakes, he just came across as a horrible person. What I really like, too, is I'm a huge fan of dual perspectives, so you see it from one side and then you see the same thing again from the other. We've seen that throughout the show because of all the different heroes, but we haven't had arcs so closely linked up. So, of course, we had last week and the week before, and then the whole alleyway fight scene. To replay that, but from his perspective of him being like, you know, obviously he was creeping around the corner, but the idea of hearing, oh, they're gonna jump you. Oh, shit, she's in trouble? Oh, yeah, that Playboy bunny robot looks absolutely menacing. I'm gonna beat the shit out of it. I didn't even realize, and I don't think we really saw it. Well, actually, we did, I think. It's so different seeing it from the front versus the back. So he did bow to our girl before leaving before, but seeing it from this perspective, you actually got a sense of he was apologizing. This show's really good. And to be honest, this is probably within a top 5 episode of the show so far. And I mean, we've got some really good episodes that contend for each other. But the most common thing I come back to is how shitty this world is. Because while there's plenty of hero stories, or you can even look at how our own society works with social stigma about, you know, larger followers you have, the more influence you have. Like, as an example, someone with 100,000 subscribers on YouTube saying something about a show will naturally have a more well-received perception than someone with 100 subs on YouTube saying the same thing. Because naturally our brains are wired because of how the internet's evolved to say, oh, that person has a lot of subs, therefore they're more important. It's dumb, but it does work. But imagine that type of system where it actually affects the lives, not just because of these, like, pre-made constructs, but because you're like dance puppet dance. Like, we're 1 or 2 episodes away from having an ability that is like a puppeteer, and this person is just dancing like a puppet because of the masses. You know how there's that thing Twitch plays games where like there'll be different video games and Twitch will type in the chat and it will control, so like Pokemon and all these different things. Like, something like that could happen in this world, but for someone's life. They'd be like, okay, let's make him dance now. And people would just accept it as it's fine. For an episode that was as silly as this, there was a lot of silliness. The fact that they were able to double whammy us with the depression as well is insane. You know, Ghostblade, I remember back in the first few episodes, he was one of the more anticipated characters. Like, he had popularity out the ass before we even knew who he was. I highly suspect we're going to see his hero rankings massively increase after this episode. And because it was not only a great episode, but you just see so much more cool factor on top of him being kind of a psychopath, because he's like, hey, listen, someone's got to get the job done. And I'm like, my boy, you didn't have to get into the art of, killing, but hey, I get why you did, I suppose. I really liked what they did with the production. It kind of reminded me of stop motion with the way there was like a lack of in-between frames and how it would jump from one image to the next in so many different art styles. Given the amount of anxiety he had around sounds and people, it really made the viewer equally as paranoid as he was, and it makes so much sense on why he was so shut off and then obviously got, confined into this preconceived box by public society standards. Great shit. Some people haven't liked the last few arcs. Opinions, I've absolutely loved them, but yeah, I will say, Lucky Cian's still my favorite arc, but I won't be surprised if come next week I say old Ghostblade my second favorite. Let me know your thoughts down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, and of course ring that bell. Patreon for live reactions and other exclusives like, hey, I give video shout out to all my patrons. So today we got DYR, Extrash, Slazel, Isil Sedera, Jacob McCarthy, Divine Tank 00, True Demon Lord, Chris, and we also have Dawes. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care, and you all have a good one.